the June meeting in terms of initial assessments of the impact. But I know we've done quite a bit of communications in terms of how we've responded, but I think it's important for district executive and members more generally to get an overview in advance of that formal report coming through the democratic process. So I think a few areas I'm going to cover, and if I can take questions at the end, I'm going to talk about how the organisation has responded and what that's meant, how we've engaged in partnerships, how we supported the vulnerable and businesses, what we've done to look after staff during this time, a quick summary of our communications, and then how we're now moving into planning for the recovery. So first of all, in terms of the impact on South Somerset District Council and our initial response, prior to the lockdown happening, as this started to emerge as a crisis, we agreed our aim was really to make sure we were there to support our communities, our residents, our businesses through the crisis as best as we could. And as a subsidiary aim, we also wanted to ensure that we had business as usual as far as possible in our customer-facing services. And this meant very quickly reshaping the whole organisation, boosting some services, mothballing others, and setting up completely new services. And it meant us asking our staff to be completely flexible and do whatever they needed really to be done so that we could support our communities. And as part of that, we enacted our business continuity arrangements, but also stood up our emergency response arrangements, both as a council and also within the partnerships that we're part of. And I'm not going to go through all the details of what's on this slide, but it's a quick summary of some of the groups we set up. A lot of meetings, not for meeting sakes, but to really coordinate the work both within the council and across the agencies. In terms of the impact on the business, we've effectively redeployed almost a quarter of our staff to different areas of the business to be able to respond. So revenues and benefits are a key area really where we've doubled the staff in revenues and half as much again in terms of benefits, and that's really in terms of getting the business grants out, which I'll talk about, and also the hardship, dealing with the hardship funds and additional requests for support within that area. We more than doubled the resource within our Customer Connect, so the front line dealing with that, and I'll explain a bit more about that. But also boosted other areas, housing and homelessness, a key area where we've acted. And then the Hub, a completely new service that we set up, and I'll talk a bit more about that as well. Before the lockdown actually happened, we also moved to home working for all those that could home work. So to give you a picture of that, so this was in the week before the lockdown was announced, we moved from an average of 50 of our staff a day working at home to around 300 each day, connecting remotely and working from a home environment. Our Connect service is our front line in dealing with our customers and their needs. Obviously, the physical office closed, so people weren't able to visit us anymore. But we moved quite quickly to a 7-day-a-week working, and extended our hours specifically to deal with inquiries that were related to the coronavirus and the impact it was having on people. So this was, helping with business grants, claiming benefits, paying council tax, people who needed food supplies, people who had housing needs, but also people who, in terms of dealing with waste. Part of this work was connecting with the wider partnership work in Somerset, so that we had a coordinated response and that the councils were supporting each other. And so there is a Somerset-wide coronavirus support helpline, and that is staffed by people from our Connect team, but also the various other teams across the 5 district and county councils in terms of dealing with inquiries. We've got to say that from the initial outset there was quite a high need. Certainly now at weekends and particularly Sundays we've got quite a low demand, and we're looking at how we do that and how we can use the partnership arrangements to make sure that that service is still there, but we can do it in a way that isn't using so much resources. Part of this as well was also doing welfare calls out to customers using the data sets that we have both locally and from the government to make sure that our residents are safe and well, and seeing if they need any support. If they haven't come forward asking for support, proactively going out there and asking them whether they do need any support from us. So the welfare calls that we've been doing with that team have been really important and identified people who didn't know how to get support that needed it. I mentioned that part of our response was about engagement and partnership, and that's operated at a number of levels. So nationally and regionally coordinating what we do has been really important. So we've been in weekly meetings with other councils, with the Secretary of State, weekly calls with often a government minister or two, just specifically on district council matters and how we respond to this. Regular meetings as well with government departments over specific issues such as homelessness and business support. And then also at a regional level through the local enterprise partnership, coordinating efforts to support businesses, and then with Southwest councils in terms of sharing information and coordinating our response as a group of Southwest councils and offering support to each other where that's needed. We're part of the Avon and Somerset Local Resilience Forum. Now, this is part of the framework of local resilience forums that was set up under the Civil Contingencies Act in 2004 to make sure agencies such as the emergency services, local authorities, health sector, other statutory bodies and government worked effectively together on a sub-regional basis to coordinate response. And as such, we are a primary responder within that and a partner within that. And what we've been doing is working with partners such as the police and emergency services and the health sector to coordinate our response. The Local Resilience Forum, like many others, declared a major incident. This was on the 19th of March within Avon and Somerset, one of the earlier ones. And through twice weekly strategic meetings and tactical meetings that are now 3 times a week, they were initially 7 days a week, and various other work streams and cells, we've been coordinating our response and dealing with some of the challenges that we've faced across the area. So in particular, the sort of things that we've been dealing with at the Local Resilience Forum level, things like dealing with the issues around PPE that have been reported nationally and how we make sure that we get PPE to the right places and the right people within the region, dealing with testing and local arrangements for that, monitoring the number of cases, supporting the health sector. We're now into planning recovery, but also things that not particularly nice to talk about, but we had to talk about around what's called death management and how the system deals with that to make sure that we can deal with it effectively, but also sympathetically to those people who have lost their loved ones. We're also recognising that Avon and Somerset is quite a large area and diverse. We're part of a partnership with Somerset local authorities, and we've been sharing resources and doing joint planning at a number of levels. And I mentioned about the one number that we have, but this work has happened at a number of levels, really involving a number of people to make sure that we support each other as councils, and where it's appropriate, and it's important as where it's appropriate, we have consistency in what we do between the different councils to support our communities. And then there's much more local level of partnership working, which we've been engaged in heavily with town and parish councils and community organisations. This has involved really making sure that the support is there on the ground for people, and that we're able to direct people to the right support, but equally those organisations are supported effectively. And we found that whilst there have been quite a few people come forward, so over 1,500 people come forward as NHS volunteers, to date the most effective support has been that coordinated by the local organisations such as Spark and smaller community groups, as opposed to the national scheme. So just a bit of information in terms of supporting vulnerable, and we have communicated quite a bit on this, but this is something that we moved extremely quickly on as a council, recognising that as a rural area we'd have many people, particularly in our villages, who would be requiring support. So we established our Wellbeing Hub on the 30th of March. It started operating then. It took us a week to get that up and running and working effectively. And to put this in context, many councils, their Wellbeing Hubs have only just started within the past couple of weeks. We're now into the 6th week, coming towards the end of the 6th week of operating this service, and it's evolved as well. So initially, it was providing support to people who were shielded, so on the government's shielded list, recognising that the initial national service wasn't able to provide all the support that was needed, and we've been supplementing that support. And that is still actually the biggest area of support that we provide. But then also recognising that there are vulnerable people throughout the communities that aren't on the shielded list that needed support. And so we've been providing a service to those as well. And then homelessness and hardship have been added to it. And given the challenges with the national voucher scheme, we've also been providing support to people who are entitled to free school meals. And we did this by redeploying people from across the council, really, who had appropriate skills to be able to operate that. And that operates 6 days a week from our Westlands Entertainment Centre. And just to show what's been achieved so far since the 30th of March, 464 says food boxes. It's actually food and other essential supplies have been supplied to residents and families across South Somerset, predominantly to the shielded group, but also to vulnerable and those facing financial hardship, and then more recently, those families where the children are entitled to free school meals. And I mentioned as well the homelessness. So we actually are providing hot meals to those, including families who are in hostels and hotels in Yeovil. And I'll say a bit more about the homeless in a minute. And I think in operating the service, I think we need to recognise the community spirit that there has been around this in supporting us. And we're really grateful to the generous donations we receive. We highlighted a few there: Oscar Mayer, Yeovil Valley, Tesco and Co-op have provided us with essential supplies, and Oscar Mayer in particular, thousands of meals they've provided us with that are now supporting homelessness with homeless people within the area. In addition to this, we were given some hardship funds by the government to support those people who are facing financial hardship. This was primarily directed to extending the council tax support scheme. So we received just over £1.1 million for that. And this gave up to £150 off council tax for those who are in receipt of council tax support. We had a challenge in that to do this through our systems, like every council, we needed a software update, and clearly there was a big lag. So we were given the guidance on the 24th of March, and the new software only came on stream a few days ago. So whilst we were waiting for that software to come on stream, the team manually went in and adjusted the direct debits that were due from those who still had payments to make for council tax, so that they could get the benefit of that immediately, which was a big job. So in total, we've supported 5,539 households through this, but the demand for support continues within this area. So we've been supporting people, as I said, through the Hardship Fund, providing food boxes, particularly for those who are claiming universal credit and whilst they're waiting for universal credit, don't have funds to buy food and other essential supplies themselves. We also have 760 further council tax support applications to be processed that have come in, which is a significant increase in terms of the support that people need out there, that people facing hardship. For information as well, during this time we suspended our work to recover funds that were owed to us. This isn't a permanent decision, but it was recognising that some people were facing extreme hardship, and we didn't want to penalise anyone who was facing hardship, but equally we didn't have the resources to fully assess those who may be able to pay and those who were facing hardship, but we were keeping this under review. We've done a lot of work around homelessness and rough sleepers, and we're working with the government on that to meet their ambition. And effectively, there was an ambition to get all rough sleepers off the streets within a week. We achieved that apart from those who declined to be accommodated. So we're now supporting 189 vulnerable people through this crisis through hostel and temporary accommodation. So we're grateful to hotels who have been willing to turn over bed space to us. We've also refurbished a house at a very fast pace to provide temporary accommodation for families and individuals as well. And for those who wouldn't refuse to be accommodated, we provided tents and sleeping bags. I mentioned already through the hub, we're providing other support as well. So that the hot meals each day and other food as well, making sure that everyone has plenty to eat. But we recognise as well that this is a group of people that quite diverse, but have different needs, a lot of needs, and so we've put in a lot of support to those people to enable them to stay safe and to deal with some of the other challenges that they're facing. And again, this was a massive partnership effort. I won't dwell on this, but we haven't done any of this on our own. We've done it in partnership with other agencies, with the commercial sector, and in particular with community organisations as well, and charitable organisations to get rough sleepers off the streets. And as well as that, we've been working to support a growing network of community support for people across South Somerset, in particular working with Spark to do this, making sure that we had a place where people could be referred to if they needed additional help. So when people come through to the hub or Customer Connect, if there is help that we can't directly support, we have a network across South Somerset of help that can be provided to people and other support. Turning to support for businesses, this has obviously been a high-profile area that the government has been pushing significantly, and a large part of the support was around additional business rate relief, and the total value of relief to South Somerset was £25 million, and our objective was really to get that processed extremely quickly, so that no one was paying us who didn't need to pay us anymore for their business rates. It meant rebilling all those that were entitled to business rate relief, and we got that done extremely quickly, which is very good news. And then a focus on the business grants. And again, our objective here was to process these payments as quick as we could to make sure that no business suffered, and that money was in the South Somerset economy as quickly as possible. This has been a changing picture in terms of the number of people entitled to grants, and we've actually now paid out 2,361 grants, so that figure will have gone up undoubtedly yesterday, which is almost as many as was on the original entitlement list, but that list has been reviewed and others have been now added to it. So we were at 80% of payments of the original list, but clearly a list is now added to, so we're about 68% of payments, or probably closer to 70% now. Part of the challenge has been actually reaching some businesses. Whilst it wasn't a formal application process, we needed information from them to satisfy the government criteria that they were entitled, and other basic information such as bank accounts, so that we had somewhere to pay the money to. We set up a dedicated web page and a simple form for people to upload their information, but we're still outstanding almost 1,000 businesses who have not applied for the grant, and all of our members should have now received some information about that in terms of what businesses we've got listed within their area. And I'm grateful to members that are out there phoning and checking up on those businesses and giving us intelligence and directing those businesses that are entitled to come and apply for the grants. And we have seen that starting to impact already. So there was a slight upswing already yesterday in terms of the number of grant applications that we're getting through again. We're doing other things as well to support local businesses, in particular food businesses, and producing a directory to encourage people to use local food businesses for their supplies. This is good for the economy and also better for the environment as well, and we'll be publicising more of that work shortly. Richard and the communications team have done a massive amount of work in terms of communicating with our residents, with our businesses, internally and with members as well. We created some dedicated pages on our website to provide support to residents and businesses and direct them to where they needed to go to get the support that was available. And help create content as well for the county-wide website. We've been having regular newsletters for elected members, parishes and businesses, as well as lots of internal briefings as well. Our social media channels have been really important in this, in particular Facebook and Twitter, but also we've been using YouTube and Instagram a lot more to reach people, and you can see from the figures there that we have a massive reach now through our social media channels. It's been really effective in getting some messages across. So some of our messages, for example, on Facebook have been viewed over 60,000 times, which is a massive reach, really. We've been sharing positive stories as well. There are some positive stories coming out of this, and I mentioned some of the generosity of businesses and some of the volunteering that's going on across the district, and seeing the community pull together through this crisis has been really positive, and it's been great to be part of that and to see that happening to support our residents in South Somerset. And we've been working with our media partners as well, and there's been, to this point, a good deal of collaboration between media partners and ourselves and the other public bodies to make sure that we get the messages right and get the positive stories out there as well as the information in terms of how residents and businesses can get support from local authorities. I have to say, in terms of staff, this has been a really challenging time for our staff, and I think we need to recognise that our staff have been totally flexible. They've been absolutely amazing, doing whatever we need to do for our communities, and this has meant a real change for many of them. All of our staff have displayed a really positive can-do attitude and overcome the various challenges we've faced over the past few weeks. They've shown total commitment to the organisation and the communities we serve. We've asked a lot of them over the past few weeks, and they've delivered. And as a result of their delivery, our response has been really rapid and effective, and I think compares really well to other local authorities. And I'm personally, I'm really proud of every member of staff in this authority in terms of how they individually have responded to this, so that we've had that collective response to meet our aim to support our residents, support our communities, support our businesses. But this has been extremely challenging for them as well. So we've moved very quickly to boost the support for our staff, recognising the various challenges that they face. So many are working remotely and therefore isolated. Some are still working on the front line and with the risk that entails for their health and for their families. And so boosting our support is really important. We've now got a 24/7 confidential helpline. We've been providing webinars and a dedicated website for advice and tips and information on how to deal with some of the challenges that we've been facing. We've supplemented this with health and wellbeing advice on our portal. We've got a team of, well, they will be mental health first aiders, but we've got a bit of a challenge in terms of completing their accreditation on that. So mental health buddies that are supporting staff across the organisation. All managers have been working with staff to help them develop a personal resilience plan in terms of how they can manage through this situation and the various challenges they've been facing. And we've invested a lot of support in our team leaders and managers to help them manage people effectively, particularly in the remote working scenario that many of them are facing. We're now into the phase where we're planning for the recovery. This is an unusual position. So most crises and emergencies affect a part of a council's community, and this one has affected all of our communities. Most crises and emergencies have a clear end to them, which is the point when the recovery starts. But this crisis doesn't have a clear end to it. It will persist for a period of time. We know that, but we need to start the recovery before the end of the crisis. Often with crises and emergencies, we're dealing with either something that impacts our communities or something that impacts our organisation. This one both impacts our communities and the organisation. So dealing with the organisation's recovery and that of our communities is a double challenge, as it were. And I have to say as well, most crises and emergencies are about getting back to normal and how things were. I think in looking at how we plan for the recovery, we need to be clear that this isn't about getting back to normal in some aspects, because it will not be possible to get back to the old normal, and it might not be desirable to get back to the old normal as well. We need to look at recovery not only from the point of view of what needs to be fixed, but also what opportunities might exist for a better environment, a better economy, and benefits for our communities as well. So we're planning for the community recovery, and I'm not going to go into the details of this because this is very much work in process, and it will evolve, and we're taking it forward with our partners as well. So we'll have a recovery plan for South Somerset, which will work with recovery plans for Somerset, the local resilience forum area, and on the economic side, the Heart of the South West LEP area as well. And clearly we need to be working with government on all of these as well. But planning for how we can support our communities recover is really important, and we're assessing the impact at the moment of this across multiple dimensions in terms of our community. The economy is obviously the biggest concern, will have impact on our community as well, and we're looking at this in terms of how we can accelerate certain things that we were planning to do anyway, but what other additional support we need to put in to ensure that we can get the economy to recover. There was some information published by the Bank of England yesterday, which was showing that their latest projections were that the economic recession will be one of the deepest ever experienced, if not the deepest on record. And despite the support that's gone in for businesses, there will be some businesses that struggle to come back or won't come back at all. And we need to be planning now for how we actually can boost business growth and jobs, and we're doing that currently with our partners across the region and engaging with government in that as well. And then the organisational recovery as well is really important, and I'm not going to list all the details here or go through the list of details, but I think it's important in terms of the organisation to recognise that nearly all our efforts in the last few weeks have been spent on reshaping the council. It's been like a 6-week transformation programme on its own. The last transformation programme was over 2 years, and we just completely reshaped the council in the past 6 weeks. And we're going to need to think about the shape of the organisation again in terms of how it supports recovery, whilst we're also still providing essential support to communities and businesses. I think this work will be ongoing, and we're going to cover this in our report to District Executive in June. On the financial side, I have to say that to date we've been working on the assumption that we'd be continue to receive government financial support. The Secretary of State, Robert Jenrick, at the start of this crisis gave lots of assurances to councils that the government would back them financially, and there's no need to worry about the additional costs we were taking on or the loss of income as a result of our crisis. On Monday, the Secretary of State appeared before a House of Commons Select Committee, and I think the position of the government has changed significantly in relation to that commitment to councils, which has cast some uncertainty around the financial position of every council in the country. We need to recognise that the national finances are under strain, and that the government may feel now it can't meet this original commitment to councils. So whilst in the last round of funding that we got from government, it was a welcome boost. I think the 1.6 million, it sounds like a lot of money. In terms of the additional cost we've taken on and the loss of income, like many councils, that will not cover us for very long. It covers us for a matter of a few weeks, not for months, and this crisis will impact for months. There are other factors contributing to the financial uncertainty going forward. So we don't know the plan for the end of lockdown. We'll be clear on this on Sunday. And we don't know how people are going to respond to this and what that will mean in particular for the economy, which clearly affects our income. And particularly our income generating services. So for example, how long will theatres be closed, and when they are able to open again, what will people's response to that be? Will they flock back, or will there be a tentative response to that? Because that will clearly impact our income. Also, not knowing the full economic impact of the crisis, or the full impact of the economic and community recovery plan at this stage, because we're still forming that. This will impact on the demand for some of our services going forward, and also the levels of income that we can expect from other services as well. So therefore, we need some time to really fully assess the position, the risks, and the possible remedies. And I think in mentioning the finances, I need to be clear, we're not in any financial trouble. It's just that along with every other council in this country, we're in a period of extreme financial uncertainty. And we're not sure what funding we'll be getting from the government to cover the costs that we have incurred and the income that we've lost. So at this stage, my advice to the leader and district executive is to be prudent and until we can fully assess our position, and to think carefully about any additional financial commitments that we may be asked to take on, and to consider how we might reduce our costs both in the short term and the longer term, so that we can make sure we are financially sustainable, and we can also be there for our communities in terms of the community and economic recovery that will undoubtedly be needed. We're working hard now as an organisation to get the information together so that we can inform members of the picture, but it's going to be clearly, when we get to June, there'll still be many uncertainties in there about where we're at as an organisation, service-wise and financial-wise as well. So I'm happy now to answer any questions if you want to allow that, Chair.